Hi, my name is Jim Simpson, and I'm a Senior Product Manager here at Duo Security. The crew and I today are coming to you live from beautiful downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the University of Michigan Wolverines and Duo Security. We'll take a quick look at the agenda as to what we're going to go over in this webinar today. We'll talk a little bit about where we've been in product development at Duo. We'll talk about what we've been hearing from you, our customers. I'd like to introduce you to Duo Platform. And then we'll go over the three major components that go into Duo Platform, including Device Insight, the Duo Access Gateway, and Policy and Control. At the very end, we'll have a wrap-up. A quick note about this particular webinar. At each section, we're going to be doing some Q&A. I believe that there is a chat window on the right that you can ask your questions in. If we happen to miss a question that's pertinent to a specific section, don't worry about it. We'll be collecting those questions, and there'll be an opportunity at the very end to go over them. I don't think there's anything else I need to go over, so with that, let's talk a little bit about where we've been. So for the last 6 months at Duo, it's been quite busy here. I would like you to ignore the big green box in the upper part of this graph right here, because I'll be spending a lot of time talking about that today. Instead, I'd like to talk about some of the other things we've done. The first big thing was role-based administrative controls, or administrative roles. If you have the Enterprise Edition of the product, we now have the ability to allow you to control the different types of admins you have in the user interface. So you can have help desk users, you can have admin users, and you can have all sorts of different kinds in between, and that way different people have different access to what's in the admin panel. We've also added another authentication method called U2F. That stands for Universal Two-Factor. It's backed by the FIDO Alliance. It's pretty cool. It's available as a Duo Labs feature for our enterprise customers. I urge you to check it out. It's a really great experience when it comes to authentication. We've also made some enhancements to our existing service around our Active Directory synchronization. And we also have support now for our authentication prompt on smaller screens. So if you get a Duo Auth prompt on your mobile device, you'll actually be able to interact with it. We've released a couple of integrations. In particular, I'd like to point out our integration for Epic Hyperspace. Epic Hyperspace is probably the most commonly used healthcare software, and now you can use Duo's two-factor service to protect it. We also offer an integration for AWS. And finally, we were able to release an integration for Okta, a cloud-based single sign-on provider. And finally, the last thing I'd like to mention is we have updated Duo Mobile. In particular, it's been a lot of little fixes and some enhancements. On iOS, we now support it as a universal application, so you can get it when you're using it on your iPad. We also support the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. And then at the end of the month, we're going to be releasing Duo Mobile 3.8 for iOS. And I'm not going to go into it now, because we'll talk to you about it when it comes out. I'm pretty sure you can guess what that's going to be. Up next, so one of the cool things about working at Duo Security and product is that we get to talk with you, our customers, quite a bit about things. And typically, the conversations go something like, what's working really well for you? What can we improve? But in some of these conversations, you've also said to us, well, I've got some other problems, and I'm wondering if you can help me with these problems. For example, I've got different kinds of users who are coming into the network and using applications. Not just my employees, but I've got contractors, I've got partners. All of these different kinds of users are using different kind of devices, not just the corporate issued laptop, or if they offer a phone, a corporate issued phone. People are bringing their own devices, they're accessing things from home. People are now coming from beyond the corporation's perimeter to get to these particular applications, and increasingly a lot of these applications are moving into the cloud. And we're wondering if you, Duo, can bring the same ease and effectiveness to my problems surrounding access to applications like you did to the two-factor service. And so we've been thinking about that a bit, and we're like, well, it's probably time to go back to basics around policy and control and visibility. Now, with our new product, we're going to be giving you the ability to see what kinds of users are accessing things, what are the different kinds of devices that they're using, where are they coming from, and then finally, what are the applications that they're using? And we're going to take all of that information and give it to you in the form so that you can create policy around who can access what applications, from where, under what circumstances, and then the automated enforcement around those particular rules. And we call that Duo Platform. Duo Platform is all about providing control around giving control around from any device for any user to any application. The three things that go into it are device insight, the Duo Access Gateway, and policy and control. Device insight is kind of like a heads-up display for all of the devices that are on your network. The Access Gateway is about providing a way for you to connect SaaS applications to whatever identity provider you already have on site, like Microsoft Active Directory. And then policy and control is the way that you can set rules up around who can access what, and then the enforcement around those rules. So the first thing that we're going to go over is device insight. What is device insight? Like I said, it's kind of like a heads-up display. It gives you some idea of what the health of the different devices are on your network. Everything from laptops to desktops to smartphone devices like Android and iOS devices. And here's what it looks like. So once you have Platform Edition, you can log into the admin panel, and you'll have a new tab on the upper left here called Device Insight. Now, I'm going to click on this tab, and the first thing that it'll bring you to is the mobile devices page. At the very top of the page, it shows a platform breakdown of the different kind of smartphone devices that are on your network. So you can see things like, I have 287 iOS devices. I have 158 Android devices. I even have some BlackBerry devices on my network. Anything that isn't in those top four, will also categorize them as other. Now, for the two big platforms, iOS and Android, we also have some particular traits that we can point out for you, like the different versions of their operating systems. You might wonder, well, why is this important? In some cases, older versions of operating systems have security vulnerabilities, and so this gives you the insight into which operating systems are actually accessing and authenticating to the different applications you have in your network. We also give you the ability to see which of these devices are jailbroken and rooted. We also allow you to see which of your users have a screen lock set on those devices. And finally, we have some really specific things for the two different platforms. On iOS, we allow you to see whether or not Touch ID is available and configured on a particular smart device. And then for Android, we can also allow you to see which devices have full disk encryption on them. That's not really applicable to iOS because all iOS devices that support Duo Mobile are automatically encrypted. Now, you've got this really cool heads-up display here, but what's really nice about this is you can actually drill into the information. And so in particular, I want to see, well, okay, I've got like 16 jailbroken devices. Now, in some of our conversations with you and talking about these features, you've said to us, well, yeah, actually, I'm the one who has the jailbroken device, and that's on purpose. And this isn't really for that particular use case so much as it is to give you insight into who else might have a jailbroken device, or in particular, maybe they've got an Android device that's rooted, and they don't actually know that it's rooted, and maybe you don't want that actually happening on your network. An anecdote about Duo in particular, we hired a new employee who was running an older version of the Android operating system, and when we were running an earlier version of this particular functionality, it ended up blocking him. And until when we went to the security team, we were like, hey, what do we want to do about this? And of course our security team was like, you guys really should upgrade the operating system. And once we did that, everything worked as usual. And we were able to get that information from here. Now I'm going to sort of dive into the jailbroken devices themselves. All of these links on this page are clickable, but this one's probably the most interesting one. So once I do that, it's going to take me to this page here that shows me all of the iOS devices that have been jailbroken. It'll give me the phone number if it has one, what platform it's running, the model, the version of Duo Mobile that's on it. It is rooted because we filtered to the rooted devices. And what's really great here is I actually get a listing of all of those users. So if you want to, you can reach out to them and say, hey, did you know this is happening? Of course, this information will feed into policy and control later, but I'll get to that when we get there. The other cool thing about this page is while it brings you to this in sort of a filtered format, there's other things you can do with it using the filters here on the left. For example, what if I wanted to see all of the rooted Android devices at the same time? I would click on Android here, and it actually pulls in all the Android devices, and then I'm going to say, I want to look at all the rooted ones. And so now I've got a listing of every single rooted and jailbroken device that Device Insight has pointed out. Pretty cool stuff. Going back up to the top at Device Insight, we've also got something that gives you insight into what the different laptops and desktops are doing on your network. So I'm going to click on this page here, Access Devices. And what it shows me right now is a breakdown of the different platforms in terms of operating systems and their versions. and then also the web browsers that those users are using to access the applications, both the web browser in particular and the version. And the reason why this is interesting is because in the past it was pretty easy to know what the users were using to access things, because largely they might be inside the corporate perimeter, they would be using a corporate issued laptop or desktop, and it was pretty likely that whatever software was on that was set up by somebody in the IT, and so you would actually know what web browser they had on it. As people are accessing things on their own devices or coming in from home, you don't really have that insight anymore, and so this is what's meant to give you that ability to see what's going on. As we continue to move forward, we'll be adding more functionality to this particular section of Duo Platform. I think, if I can check my notes here, if there's anything else I wanted to go over, we'll come up to the top, and so we have a couple of polls. What I'm going to do is we're going to put the poll out there, and then I'll start answering some questions. So our first question for you is, do you have visibility into how end-user mobile devices are used for work today? How are they used in your environment? And you can go to duo.sc/mobile poll. And while you guys are taking that poll, and we'll give you the answers as soon as we have them in, I'm going to take a look at some of these questions here. Okay, so first question I've got here is, are we able to lock out devices based on Duo app version number? Not yet, but the plan is to do so, definitely. I assume devices on your network means devices with Duo installed. Yes, so how this works, well, not entirely. That is part of it. We get telemetry from a bunch of different areas. As far as the smartphones go, yes, you have to have Duo Mobile installed in them for us to get that information. But we're also looking at other information we get via authentication logs and interactions with the users to be able to pull all that together for these different devices. Is this information available via API on a per user, per device basis? Right now, our APIs are a little bit out of sync with the product itself, but our plans are to keep the product and the APIs in sync as much as possible. Let's see here. What other questions do we have, Steve? You scroll up a bit. Let's see here. What platforms does Mobile Insight work on? Let's see. Mobile Insight, some of the more detailed stuff is for iOS and Android, but as much information as we can get via Duo Mobile, we bring it into the system. Can I control what users with rooted devices do? Yes, you can, and I'll touch on that when we get to policy and control. What version of Duo Mobile do I need to install? This currently requires that you at least are running Duo Mobile 3.5 on your device, and currently we're up to 3.7.1. Let's see here. Can I control what platforms and versions my users can use? That's also part of policy and control, and so I'll go over that when we get to that too. Do we have results from the poll yet? If not, I'll go on to the next section. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to go on to the next session, which is about Duo Access Gateway. Let's see here. All right, so what's the Access Gateway? The Access Gateway helps you securely connect your existing identity provider to, like Microsoft Active Directory, to SaaS applications in the cloud, so that your users don't actually need to have a second set of credentials provisioned to do so. We support the big four applications right out of the box, which includes Office 365, Salesforce, Box, and Google applications. And we also have a generic connector. As we move forward in the year, we're going to be adding more of them officially for support, so stay tuned. And of course, in your interactions with us, let us know which ones are the most important to you. Of course, we've had some of those conversations already, and we've got our own a list that we're going to be working on, but it's always good to know if there's one in particular that would be really important to you. How do you go about setting the Duo Access Gateway up? So there are three parts to the Access Gateway. I'm going to go to the integrations page here and start talking about that. So first, there's the service provider, sometimes called the SP. That's something like Google Apps or Salesforce. The second part of the sort of Access Gateway is the Access Gateway itself. That's the thing that connects the service provider with your identity provider, and then Duo. And finally, there's Duo itself. So if I wanted to get up and running with this, the first thing I would do is I would go to this page and create a new integration for whatever application I want to protect. In this case, I'm going to choose, let's see here, Google Apps. All right, and I'm going to call this Google Apps for Duo Security. I'll go ahead and create the integration. Now, if you've created an integration before, this page probably looks pretty similar. At the very top here, we've got some instructions on how to go about configuring Google Apps. And then there's something called policy, which I'll get to in a little bit. You need to enter the domain name, whatever the domain name that you've set with a service provider. In this case, I've set duosecurity.com with the service provider. And then I'm going to click Save Configuration. For Google Apps, it's that easy to get up and running on the admin panel. Now you'll notice that it's created this new link here that says download your configuration file. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It'll download the configuration file. Now the next step is to go to the access gateway itself. So this presumes that you've got the access gateway set up already. The access gateway is something that runs on site within your organization. There's instructions on how to go about setting it up, but I'm going to skip that for now and just assume that you've got it set up already. When you come to the access gateway for the very first time, there's a welcome screen that lets you know what's going on. You can go to admin settings to change anything you need to about the access gateway itself. Right now that amounts to the admin password, any contact information, and then the certificate that's associated with it. There's also the LDAP configuration for whatever your identity provider is. In this case, it might be Active Directory. And then finally, there's a tab for those different service providers. So I'm going to remove these really quick because I'd like to show you what it looks like from the very start. So the first thing you'll see up here is there's an Add Service Provider area. And I'm going to go ahead and click Choose File to choose a file to upload. All right, so I've got Google Apps for Duo Security. That's the file I just downloaded from the admin panel. I'm going to go ahead and click Open on that. Once I've done that, I can click Upload. At this point, I've got the application up here, Google Apps for Duo Security. The service provider is right here. Now, the next step of configuration, you actually go to the service provider itself. Different service providers have different kinds of configuration. In some cases, they just take a set of URLs. Other ones want you to download some XML metadata. In this case, I'm just going to skip that configuration and assume that you'll be doing that setup at that point. I think in Google's case, it's a set of different URLs. And then after this, you would be able to go to Google and then log into Google Apps. And at that point, you'd be able to use Duo's two-factor service with Google Apps. I'd show you that demo right now, but we don't quite have it up and running. It should be up and running on our demo site pretty soon. You'll see it next to the Salesforce thing. And it's pretty straightforward. It's exactly like you experience Google Apps, but now with Duo's two-factor service. So that right there is the Duo Access Gateway. Let's see here. We have another survey for you, and I'll let you know what the last survey turned out to be. So this survey is how many cloud applications do your end users use for work? And you can go to duo.sc/cloud_poll. Now, from the last poll regarding mobile, do you have visibility into how end user mobile devices are used for work today? 40% of you said we get some information from elsewhere, like Exchange. 33% of you said we don't have any visibility, and 28% of you said we use mobile device management. And none of you actually said we do not allow users to use personal mobile devices for work. So that means that everyone has BYOD on their hands. Now, as far as the access gateway goes, the first question I have here is, does the access gateway run on Windows? Yes, it runs on Windows. What applications can I use the Access Gateway with? Right now, out of the box, we officially support Salesforce, Office 365, Google Apps, and Box. We also have a generic connector. And most of the time, if you've worked with SAML before, you understand that it mostly works. Sometimes the different service providers use different extensions. And our goal is to have a generic one so that you can get up and running. And then as the year goes on, we'll do more official support for other ones. Let's see here. Where is the Access Gateway installed? So this currently the Access Gateway is installed somewhere on site, probably in a DMZ at your organization. Is the setup the same for every service provider? Like I mentioned earlier, it can vary from service provider to service provider. Different service providers tend to fall into three different categories. Some of them require some XML metadata, some of them require URLs, some of them require a combination of the two. Let's see here. I have a question not entirely related to the Access Gateway. Will the platform version include all the features of Enterprise and more, or is it just a totally different product not related to Duo Enterprise? Platform includes everything in Enterprise and more. Let's see here. We have an SSO on Box. How would two-factor work with an existing SSO configuration? That's a great question. So what our plan is, we don't have that just yet, but our goal is to integrate with any single sign-on provider that's out there. We currently have integrations for OneLogin and Okta. Those are cloud-based single sign-on providers. But the goal is that if you already have SSO, then we'll make the Duo Access Gateway work with that single sign-on provider as well. So whatever functionality you already have in your organization, we'll work with it. If you need the additional functionality, we've got it for you as well. Okay, I've got some results here on this particular poll. How many cloud applications do your end users use for work? Right now, it looks like, wow, about 80% of you say 1 to 5, and let's see here, 20% of you say 6 to 10. We might come back to that one in a second when we get some more results for it, because it's a little thin at the moment. So if you have a second, take the poll if you're interested. Okay, I think that is the Access Gateway. Now, here's the big kahuna, policy and control. What is policy and control? Policy and control is a way for you to create rules around who can access what applications under what circumstances. And those might be where they're coming from, what user they are, what's going on with a particular device that they're using to access the application, and then the enforcement of the rules that you build around it. How do you get started with policy? Well, I'm going to switch over. There's a new tab in Duo Platform called Policies. Pardon me for a sec. So when you come to this at the very beginning, the Policies page, well, let me take a step back. If you're an existing customer, you probably already have some settings in our administrative panel. So when you come to this page, the first thing you're going to see is an introduction to policy. And on that page, there's going to be a button that allows you to upgrade your current settings to the new policy engine. Now, the thing to note about it is most of our customers will be able to do that pretty easily. Some of you might have some conflicting settings that might not work particularly well in the policy engine, and so in that case, we'll flag that, and then we'll either reach out to you from our customer success manager team, or we'll talk with you from our support team to help you get up and running really quickly with policy. But by and large, it shouldn't affect most people, so don't worry about it too much. You should be able to click the button and get up and running with policies pretty quick. Now, once you do that, if you've already got some stuff, you're going to see any of the new policies generated on this page. If you come to this page clean, though, you're going to see a section called Global Policy and then a section called Custom Policies. Global Policy allows you to control a large number of settings across your entire deployment. And then custom policies allow you to make policies specific to applications, specific to particular groups of users, and then the intersection of applications and those groups of users. So I'm going to start off with some global policy for my deployment here. And I'm going to go to the Edit Policy button. So the different things that we cover in global policy include the new user policy, and that is what happens when a new user comes to one of the different applications that you've got on your network. We've got user location, which allows you to control where users can authenticate from and what happens when they're authenticating from those locations. We've got trusted devices, which allows your users to decide whether or not they want to trust a device for a certain amount of time. Trusted networks, where you can make it such that users don't have to do two-factor from trusted networks. We also have a control for anonymous networks. Anonymous networks are things like proxies, Tor, VPN, and in particular, what you can do is if a user is coming from that, you can take no action as it currently stands, or you could require them to always do two-factor when coming from there, or even deny them access. We also allow you to choose which authentication methods are available in your organization. We allow you to choose what mobile platforms the users can use to authenticate. And then for iOS and Android, you can also select which versions they're allowed to do so. We allow you to control whether or not rooted devices are able to do authentication. We allow you to control whether or not the users have to have a screen lock in order to authenticate. For iOS, we allow you to control whether or not people need to use Touch ID when they authenticate. And finally, for Android devices, whether or not they require full disk encryption to authenticate. Now, for this particular policy, I'm going to make some choices here. First, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to disable mobile passcodes and SMS passcodes and limit this to duo push, phone callback, and U2F token. That'll bring the security level here up just a little bit more. And I'm going to save my policy really quick, and I want to go up to the top and show you something. So on the dashboard here, you can see all of the authentications coming from different parts of the globe. And most of my users are coming from North America. There's somebody down here enjoying themselves in South America, Europe, and somebody in Russia too. That's kind of interesting. And I'm going to go back over here to policies, and I'm going to make a decision about what I want to do with user locations. So nobody was authenticating from China. And so what I'm going to say here is, well, you know what? I want to make it so that in the event somebody does, I'm going to always require them to do two-factor. So with those two things, methods and two-factor, I've got my global policy. Now, you'll notice on this page here, these particular things are bolded because they're different from the base policy that this comes with. So it now says, okay, I require two-factor authentication when it's coming from China. All other countries, no action. And I'm only allowing duo push, phone callback, and U2F tokens. Now the other half of policy is when you start associating it with groups of users and applications. So I'm going to go over to the integrations page to set some policy on my applications. In fact, I'm going to probably use Google Apps for Duo Security and get started there. So when I come to this page, you'll see it looks pretty similar to what we had before when it came to setting up an integration for one of your applications, but now there's a much larger policy section. At the very start, I've got three areas here. I've got the global policy, which is what we just worked on above, and you can actually edit this policy too in line. What's really cool about this is it reminds you you're editing the global policy, and all of the integrations use this, but they can be overridden with custom policies. That's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to use custom policies because I don't want to change the global policy for this particular integration. I don't want to change it for all of my integrations. I just want to make some changes for this one. So I'm going to choose to, let's see here, apply a policy to all the users, and I'm going to create a new one actually. I'm going to create a policy called Google User Policy. And what I'm going to say is, let's see here, trusted devices. I'm going to allow the users that are authenticating to this to trust their device for 7 days. That way they don't have to do two-factor when they're getting into Google Apps. Okay, so right now what this means, and what this should do is associate it. Great. All right, so it now tells me this policy applies to all users accessing the integration. And I can edit it to change the settings that apply to it. I can choose to unassign the policy, I can edit it, and then I can also replace it in place. Now, policies can be shared. These custom policies can be shared among groups of users and different groups of applications. It's really flexible. You can make it, you can sort of distribute your policy as much as you want, or you can keep it as simple as you'd like. Currently, it only applies to one of the integrations, and it also gives you the listing and a link for that integration in case you want to jump over and inspect it. Since I'm in that integration, we'll just go back to it really quick. Now, the kinds of users who are accessing Google Apps in my organization vary. There's me, I'm just your regular Google user, and I often have to email people to help me make changes in it, and I want to thank all of those people for responding to my requests. There's also the Google administrators in the building who sort of can set different policies around security when it comes to Google Apps. And so I actually am going to apply a different policy to those groups of users. And so I don't have that policy yet, but I'm going to create it. I'm going to say Google admin policy here as the name. And I'm going to say, let's see here, when it comes to anonymous networks, I want them to always require 2FA. I'm also going to add a new user policy, and I'm going to deny them access because those administrators had already better have Duo set up before they go to Google Apps. And finally, I want to make sure that their devices have screen locks on them, and I don't want them authenticating from rooted devices. And so now this is my pretty tight policy applied to, this is the next thing I need to do. I'm going to apply it to my Google Apps admins here. So I've already got this group set up with my Google Apps administrator in it, and so now this admin policy will apply to this specific set of users. And so now, what's really great is my regular users aren't impacted by this. They can trust devices, they can easily log in without having to re-authenticate over and over again. But when it comes to my administrators, I don't want them using rooted devices. I don't want them using screen locks. And I definitely don't want them to be enrolling for the very first time when they go to administer Google Apps. And so that's an overall view of sort of how a policy works. Let's see here. I want to check my notes really quick here. All right, let me go up here really quick to policies. Now, once I've got some custom policies in place, you'll see them here, okay? And if you want to, you can also create policies directly from here. If you have some idea of what they're going to look like based on what your deployment looks like already, you can create them here, and then you can go into the different applications and apply them. I think that's pretty much it for this particular demo. We're going to go back over to the Prezzo, and we have another poll for you guys. This one is, over the last 6 months, I've accessed business applications like mail and cloud from how many unique locations? So what are the different locations? And this might be different countries, home, work, all the different locations that you might be accessing your applications from. And you can go to duo.sc/geo_poll. And while you're doing that, I am going to go back to the cloud application question, because now we have a whole bunch of answers for it. So this has changed a little bit for the first answer. So previously, it was 80% for 1 to 5, and now it's actually 56%. So 56% of you say that your users use 1 to 5 cloud applications. More than 10 is now 20%, 22% of the responses. 6 to 10 is about 20%, which is what we saw before. And finally, 2% of you say we don't allow any cloud applications. Okay. And do we have some questions about policy and control? Okay. I do have some questions from some of the customers who've talked to us over the last couple days, so I'm going to start answering those while you come up with some questions or answer the poll. So how many policies can I have? You can only have one global policy, but you can make as many custom policies as you want to. Another question is, how many application policies can I have? You can only have one policy for an application, but you can have as many different user group applications as you want to for it. And so the idea there is that you're going to have a base global policy for your entire deployment. You'll have a base policy for a particular application, or maybe it's shared between 2 applications. But then you're going to have different kinds of users who are accessing those applications. And so you can then layer those different groups of users with their particular policies on top of that, however simple or complex you need it to be. Let's see here. Oh, wow. Okay. So for this particular poll, we'll go back to the questions in a second, regarding business applications from different locations. About 59% of you say between 3 to 5 different locations. 22% of you said 5 to 10. 14% of you said, I can't keep count. Well, have we got the product for you? And finally, let's see here, 4% of you said less than 2, just the office and home. Okay, great. Let's see here. Okay, another question on policy and control. How often does the user location information get updated? This is the great thing about SaaS applications. So Duo is maintaining all of that information. We take it from a variety of locations, and then internally we make sure to manage it before we start using it for you. And we update it pretty frequently. Our software usually gets updated once every 2 weeks or so, but we're always on top of this particular feature. Let's see here. Any plans to enhance this so that policy can be defined based on usage history? Like, for example, the user is usually in, say, Illinois and now shows up in China, so maybe they should be doing 2-factor. Yes, that will be coming later on this year. Are we going to do anything around geovelocity? If you haven't heard of geovelocity before, the idea is that, say, I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm logging in from Ann Arbor, Michigan, at 2 p.m. to tell all my friends, hey, I had this really great product webinar. It was so awesome, and we had all these people on it. And then 5 minutes later, suddenly there's an authentication for me from China. It's physically impossible for that to happen. We haven't developed the flight that goes that fast yet. Perhaps Elon Musk will help us with that, but for now, we're kind of stuck. And so geovelocity is a way for us to determine whether or not a user is been compromised in some way, shape, or form. And so what would happen in that case is the administrator might get an alert. you could take a number of different actions. You might want to bump up to two-factor for the user if they were normally behind, like trusted devices. You might want to have an alert be silently thrown on the back end so that you could do some user investigation to see what's going on with the account. And then on occasion, every once in a while, some IP addresses are incorrect and it might be a false alarm. But that's less likely at a country level. Let's see here. What happens if an application doesn't work with policy features like trusted devices? So trusted devices doesn't necessarily work with, like, say, a radius integration. We support it for as many things as we can, but if you go to a particular application that doesn't support it, then it won't be available to that application. When does policy become effective? That's a good question. So when I was going through the different policy screens, the moment that I save a policy in the modal dialog there, it becomes active for anybody who's authenticating at that point. Let's see here. Can I have alerts sent as an action instead of doing something to the user? Yes, we will be building that as part of Duo Platform. I think I understand the question. And is that it for questions there? Oh, one sec. We have another question. Okay, here we go. Are there controls available to limit simultaneous logins? That's a great feature request. Not at this point, but it's definitely on the roadmap. All right. Oh, I have a couple of general questions here. How much does platform cost? Platform costs $6 a user a month. For our existing customers, there's some promotional programs that we'll be talking about. And when is this going to be available? So you might have seen our announcement yesterday. We'll be making this generally available to all of our customers on May 12th. That actually leads me to the next section, unless I've got some more questions. I think I do. Okay, give me a second here. Okay. Is Platform the successor to Enterprise or a separate product? I'm not sure I entirely understand the question. Enterprise isn't going away, so it's not necessarily a successor to it. If customers still want to buy Enterprise Edition, they certainly can, or Business, or if they want to stick with Personal, of course. Platform will be offered alongside with them. We're hoping that you'll try it out, you'll find some use in it, and you'll want to keep it. So, it's sort of the next thing that we're doing after Enterprise Edition, but our plans are to continue to both build features for Enterprise Edition and for Platform Edition. Okay, I think that's it for questions. This next part here, I want to do some wrap-up. So really quick, and unless there are other questions that come up, we'll get to those. But I wanted to let you know that next week we'll be at the RSA conference in San Francisco. If you're going, we would love to meet you at our booth on the exposition floor. You can meet me and my colleagues, and we can show you more of this stuff in person. Another cool thing that's happening there is the Duo Security Summit. So this is an invite-only event that's happening on Wednesday, put together by our team. We would love to have you there. If you're interested in that, you can go to duosecurity.com/summit to sign up. Again, we'd love to see you. We always like talking to our customers, and we can't wait to show you these things off in person. So really quick, for those of you who want to jump off the call and move on with the rest of your day, if you're interested in trying out Platform Edition and getting more information about it before it's generally available, you can go to duosecurity.com/platform and see how we can make security easy and effective for you too. With that, I'm going to look and see if we have any other questions here. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so device visibility requires our authentication prompt. Does policy require that as well? So I would say that our authentication prompt is part of the things that go into policy. It certainly helps, but as much telemetry as we can get from the different devices that are accessing services, be it FAT client or otherwise, we will take that information up so that you can make decisions about what's going on with the different access to different applications. Any other questions for this? Okay, I think that's it for us today. Again, Duo Platform will be ready on May 12th. If you're interested, sign up at duosecurity.com/platform. And again, if you're going to be at RSA next week, we'd love to talk to you. Thank you so much. My name is Jim, and we really appreciate you talking to us and being our customers.